Okay guys, so now we're on our JavaScript code. Right now, what we're just going to do now is take this code and then put it in an external file so that we can see it working in another file. Okay, so let's delete this. So the first thing that we're going to do is create a JavaScript file. Okay, just like with CSS and HTML, we have to create a file that has its own extension at the end. Okay, so the name of this JavaScript file can be anything you want. I'm just going to name it home because the JavaScript file is for the home file. And then it's going to be home dot, and then remember this extension. The extension for JavaScript is JS. Okay? At the end, I'm going to ask you guys the extensions for all the files that we've learned so far. So now we created the home.js file. Okay? So this is our JavaScript file. Now all we're going to do now is write the exact same code that we wrote in the script element before. So we're just going to write console.log, and then inside of the quotations, we're going to write, hello, this is from an external JavaScript file. Okay? So it says, hello, this is from an external JavaScript file. Okay. So now let's go back into our website and try refreshing. Then we're going to go into our inspector and then check if the console has said anything. So, do you guys see anything in the console? Let me close this. Is anything written in the console? No, there's nothing written in the console. Why is that? That's because we haven't linked our files together yet. Just like with CSS, you can write as much CSS as you want inside of a CSS file, but if it's not connected to your HTML file, you won't be able to see any of the styles that you wrote. So we need to go back and then link our file to our HTML file. Okay? So, how do you link your files together? So, with CSS, you would write link, but with a JavaScript file, you have to write script. Just like with the script element, you have to write script as well. So we're gonna write script, and then instead of writing a script, we're just gonna close the element at the end right here. Then we're gonna write src. src equals, and then dot slash, and then home.js. So before, what we would write is our JavaScript code inside of the script element. But what we're doing now is we're telling the computer, okay, go to this path that I just gave you, this path right here. Go to this path, and then put all of the code that you find here, all of the JavaScript code that you find here, inside the script element that we put right here. And then it will put all our code inside of the script element. Okay? So now, let's save our page, and then refresh and see what happens this time. So, a second. I think I need to close it correctly. Refresh. There we go. So my problem was that I closed the element right here, like this, when there should have been a closing script tag. It's not a tag that can only take one tag, okay? It's not an element that can only take one tag. So make sure you write script, source, home.js, and then write the closing script tag, okay? So now when we refreshed our page, we can see that our console.log is written, right? It says, hello, this is from an external JavaScript file. So now we're going to continue learning about the other things that we could do with JavaScript. Okay? So, another thing that we can do using JavaScript is use elements that are inside of our HTML document. Okay? So, this entire page is called what? It's called an HTML document. So the way that we refer to this page is by using the word document inside of JavaScript. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is give this element an attribute or an identifier. The identifier we're going to give it is ID. Okay, ID equals, and then the name of the identifier we're going to give it is let's just call it click button, click BTN. It's just a name I made up. You can give it any name you want. Okay, so it's going to be click BTN. And then we're going to go into home.js. So now we're going to write the same code that was inside the inside of the button, but we're going to write it in JavaScript this time, inside of the actual JavaScript file. So the first thing we have to do is call this button. So we're going to say document dot, so we're calling the document now, and then what we're going to do is get an element by its ID. So we're going to write get element by ID. Okay? Get element by ID. So now inside of the parentheses, we're going to write an element's ID that we want to get. So we're gonna write double quotes and then go back to home.html. So it says click btn, right? So we're just gonna copy this name because I don't want to write it out, and then we're gonna paste it right here. It says click btn now. So now this is the element that we have in our document right here. So now what do I want to do with the element? Well, we're gonna write dot on click equals, and then we're gonna create a or rather we're gonna write another parentheses, and then we're gonna write another 2 parentheses inside of that, and then an equal sign and a greater than sign, and then curly braces, and then we're gonna write our code in here. So this is a bit complicated, right? It's a lot of code, right? A jumble of code. But just make sure to remember it, and this will be the most common piece of code you guys write while you're writing JavaScript, okay? So this is called an anonymous function, okay? You will learn more about functions later, but it's basically a function or a block of code that doesn't have a name, okay? So it says on click, and then we're gonna write parentheses, and then an equal sign and a greater sign, and then curly braces, and then inside of those curly braces and parentheses, we're gonna write our code, okay? So now, what do we want to do when the person clicks the button? What do we want to do? We want to make an alert that says, hey, this is an alert from JavaScript. Okay? So, now we finished writing our code. But, when we go back and then save everything, when we go back and then reload, it won't work. I'll tell you why. There will be an error in the console as well, okay? So we're going to refresh. So what does this say? It says uncaught type error, cannot read properties of null, reading on click. So what does null mean? It says cannot read properties of null. A null is something that is not there. It's invisible, or it doesn't exist. It says can't read properties of null. So what it's saying is they cannot find the properties of something that doesn't exist. So what we're trying to do right now is we try to get an element by ID, and then we try to use the onClick property that it has. That's what an attribute is, the onClick attribute or property, and we try to write some code for what happens when it's clicked, right? But what the problem we didn't understand is that this script element is in the head. Everything in the head of HTML runs before all of the elements are created. So this script tried to run before all of these elements existed. These elements, they didn't exist yet, and then the script is trying to find all the elements inside the body. The head comes before the body, right? So how can the JavaScript find anything that's inside the body before it's created? So there are 2 things we can do to fix this. The first thing is we can just take the script and then just put it under all of our elements, and then just make sure that the script is always at the end. We can do that, or we can put this element back, and then instead of making sure that the script is always at the bottom while we're writing our code, we can just add another attribute called defer. We can just write DEFER. And then what that will do is make sure this script runs after all the other elements are created. So the browser will say, okay, let's put this script aside, and then let's load everything else. And then after all the other elements are loaded, we'll put the script back and then we'll run it. Okay, so we'll try both ways. Okay, so first we'll just delete this defer, and then we'll copy this and then put the script at the bottom under the button, so it'll run after the button is created. So now let's go back and then refresh our page, and then you'll see, oh, okay, it says it's not a function, so we have to write so okay, so onClick actually doesn't. One second, guys, let me pause the recording. Okay, so I believe onClick, let me try something first. So function clicked. You'll learn about functions later. I'm just gonna test if this works first. Equals clicked. Let me check. Okay, so let me go back to the recording. Let me start recording one more time. Okay, so I found the problem. The problem was that the onClicked is not supposed to be used as an anonymous function like I told you before. So when you're writing onClick, you need to create your own function and then add that to the onClicked attribute. So the way we create a function is writing function, then the name of the function, then we're going to write parentheses, and then a bracket, and then inside of the alert, and then inside of the code, we're going to write alert, and then the name of the alert. Okay? Then we're going to write equals, and then the name of our function. Okay? We'll go more in depth about functions later, but this is what you just need to know right now. Okay? We're going to save this code, and then go back, and then refresh the page. Now you see that the code, there's no error inside the inspector now. So if we click the button, what do you guys think will happen now? If we click the button, now we can see that there's an alert, right? The code has worked. It says, hey, this is an alert from JavaScript. Now let's go back into our HTML and try something else. We'll try using defer. I'm going to write defer, and then save, and then refresh. So now you see the same thing happens, and if we click me, the same thing happens, right? We have our alert. Okay? So now I'm going to click OK, and now I'm going to stop the recording, and then get you guys' questions.